Let's be honest, we've all been there, staring at the clock in the final hours of an options life. It can feel like walking through a minefield, right? One wrong step, and a winning trade can flip into an absolute disaster. Well, in this explainer, we're going to give you the map to get through it completely safe.
So, picture this. It's Friday, 1 minute after the bell. You're breathing a sigh of relief because that option you were worried about expired worthless. But then, you get an alert. It's a margin call for thousands of shares of stock. How in the world does that happen? This isn't just a case of bad luck. It's what happens when you don't fully grasp the mechanics of expiration. We're going to break down exactly how this nightmare scenario unfolds, and more importantly, how to make sure it never, ever happens to you.
All right, let's start the countdown. You need to understand that in the final days, maybe even the final week of an options life, the normal rules of trading just kind of go out the window. Time starts to speed up, and risks you thought you had plenty of time to deal with are suddenly right on your doorstep.
And this right here is the engine behind all that chaos, a force we call theta, or time decay. Think of it like an ice cube melting. When you're 45 days out, it's melting slowly, drip by drip. But as you get closer, especially in those last couple of weeks, that thing starts melting fast. By Expiration Friday, it's like a waterfall. If you're an option buyer, theta is your mortal enemy. But if you're a seller, this is your bread and butter, right? You're collecting that decay. But it's this rapid acceleration that creates the perfect storm for all the traps we're about to uncover.
Okay, this next point is absolutely crucial. You got to understand this. Most of the stock options you're trading are American style. That means the person who bought the option can exercise it. They can demand their shares at any time before expiration, any time at all. So if you're the seller, you can get assigned that stock on a Tuesday morning, weeks before the option is set to expire. On the flip side, you've got European style options, which are mostly for big indexes. Those can only be exercised on the final day. That one little difference is the entire reason the assignment ambush is such a real threat for most of us.
So how does this actually lead to an ambush? Let's get into the most common trap for option sellers. That gut-wrenching feeling of waking up on a Monday morning and finding your account is suddenly holding hundreds, maybe thousands of shares of a stock you never, ever wanted to own.
The main culprit here is a process called auto-exercise. And you can think of this as a default setting on your brokerage account that you probably never even knew was there. It's designed to be helpful, actually. The system sees your option is in the money, even by a single penny, and it assumes, hey, this is valuable. Of course you want the stock. So it exercises it for you. The problem is, it all happens automatically, usually overnight, and the system doesn't call you to ask first.
And it's a pretty scary chain reaction. Step 1, your option closes just barely in the money. Step 2, after hours, the broker system kicks in and automatically exercises it. Step 3, you wake up the next morning, check your account, and there they are, 100 shares of stock for every contract you held. And if you don't have the cash sitting there to cover that purchase, boom. Step 4, the dreaded margin call.
So what's the warning sign? How do you see this coming? It all comes down to something called extrinsic value. You can think of this as the hope or time premium in an options price. A buyer is almost never going to exercise early if there's a bunch of extrinsic value left, because they'd just be throwing that money away. But once that value collapses, and a good rule of thumb is below 10 cents, all the alarm bells should be ringing in your head. There's no longer a financial penalty for the buyer to exercise, and your risk of getting assigned just skyrockets.
Now this brings us right to our next major hazard, which happens in what I like to call a zone of pure chaos and uncertainty. This is what traders call pin risk. Pin risk is when the stock price, in the final minutes of trading on expiration day, is sitting right on top of your strike price. It's just hovering there, bouncing back and forth. And believe me, as an options seller, this is one of the most stressful situations you can possibly be in, because you have absolutely no idea if you're about to be assigned thousands of shares of stock or nothing at all. Let's look at this second by second. It's 2 seconds before the market closes. You sold a $50 strike put option. The stock is trading at $50.01. Okay, phew, your option is out of the money. You're breathing a sigh of relief, thinking it's going to expire worthless. But then, 1 second later, a final trade prints, and the stock price drops just 2 cents to $49.99. In the blink of an eye, your safe option is now in the money. And just like that, your fate for the entire weekend is now completely out of your hands.
And this is the seller's dilemma. You're completely in the dark. You have no idea what the person on the other side of that trade is going to do. Are they going to exercise for a tiny 2-cent per share profit? Or maybe their commission fees are too high and it's not worth it. You just can't know.
And this is the real danger of pin risk. Your entire risk management plan goes right out the window. Any hedge you had on is now totally useless because you have no idea if you'll be holding 0 shares come Monday or a massive position.
And if that wasn't enough uncertainty to deal with, there is one final sneaky trap, and it's the fact that the price you see on your screen at 4 p.m. isn't always the final price. Now, this is a trap that's built on a huge misconception. The price at the closing bell is not the official price. The final settlement price, the number that actually decides if your option is in or out of the money, can still change. Why? Well, because there are late trades and huge market-on-close orders from big institutions that are still being processed after the bell rings, and they can nudge that final price just enough to cause absolute chaos.
Just take a look at this table to see exactly how this can play out. At 4 p.m., the last trade you see for the stock is $99.98. You're looking at your $100 strike call option and thinking, great, it expired worthless. But then, a little while later, a large trade that was actually executed right at the close finally gets reported, and the official settlement price gets locked in at $100.35. And what's the result of that? Well, that option you were so sure was safe is now suddenly in the money. That means it's now subject to auto-exercise, and you could be on the hook for 100 shares of stock per contract that you had absolutely no idea were coming your way. This is exactly how that nightmare scenario we started with happens in the real world.
Okay, we have definitely outlined the dangers. We've talked about the scary stuff. Now let's talk about what you can actually do about it. It's time to shift from playing defense to playing offense with a proactive playbook.
I love this quote because it just hits the nail on the head. Assignment isn't some random lightning strike from a clear blue sky. It's a predictable event, and it has clear warning signs. This isn't about being scared. It's about having a strategy. The whole key is knowing what to look for so you can act decisively instead of just reacting to a crisis.
And here it is. This is your playbook, your 3 main defensive moves. Number 1, and it's the simplest, when in doubt, get out. Just close the position before the final bell, and you can sleep easy all weekend. Number 2, roll the position. This is where you close out your option that's about to expire and open a similar one further out in time. You're basically just buying yourself more time to be right. And third, if you're the one who actually owns the long option, you can call your broker and give them a do not exercise instruction. That takes auto exercise completely off the table.
And hey, here's a little pro tip for you. On expiration day, check the open interest on the option chain. If you see a strike price that has a gigantic number of open contracts, that spot can act like a magnet for the stock price. This is tied to a theory called max pain, which is the idea that the big players have an incentive to push the stock toward the price where the most options expire worthless. It's not a crystal ball for sure, but it can be a really powerful clue as to where the big battle might be fought.
So at the end of the day, the key takeaway is this. Expiration isn't some big, scary monster to be feared. It's just another variable that needs to be managed. Once you really understand the mechanics of time decay, assignment, and pin risk, you can stop being reactive and start being proactive. You can turn one of the most stressful moments in trading into just another part of your overall strategy. Thanks for joining us.